Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Loochador podcast, SEC Media Days edition, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. And Billy Liucci's obviously here with us. Billy, 16 teams now in the SEC. When you go to Academy, gear up on every hopefully it's only Aggies if you're watching this, but I'm sure there are other fan bases.
There actually are others. Yeah. So, like in Omaha, like had a lot of Tennessee fans. So
very nice fans, by the way. I find them.
They were awesome.
Yeah,
they were awesome. Like I thought they were awesome in Knoxville, and they were even better in Omaha. Just hanging out, like I think just longer periods of time with them, kind of throughout that week, and then through that 3-game series. Love the Tennessee fans, but a lot more of them watched this than I would have expected.
Yeah.
Had some Kentucky and Florida fans tell me the same thing. So great, and they've told me it's not just the week we played you guys. Like we listened.
They become fans of the
show
that
week, and we started watching. I love that, and I love that they too can and do shop at Academy.
Yep,
Sports and Outdoors, because especially the outdoor part. I think when you live in Tennessee,
I'm an outdoorsman.
No, you're not.
I'm into fishing.
No, you're not.
Now, I went fishing in the last month.
Okay.
I want to hunt.
Okay.
I'm looking for somebody to take me. Okay. Academy's got you there. I go in the pool all the time. We got some floats from Academy the other day.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, I'm not going to say what I'm doing on the pool front, but I will be purchasing any and all pool equipment
from Academy.
And floats and outdoors.
And then my daughter had a game out of town. She forgot her ball. Where did we stop? Academy. Bought a ball for soccer.
Did buy my dad shoes from Academy.
Great shoes.
Father's Day.
Yep.
So everything.
Props.
Everything Academy. But I think the Tennessee people probably, and I'd say like Florida, and probably Georgia, even Louisiana. They do a lot of fishing in Louisiana. I think that swath of the country probably does a little more outdoors, the sports and outdoors. They probably do a little more of the outdoor portion than you do.
Yeah, I dabble in it.
Yeah.
By dabbling, I read about it and I watch YouTube videos.
Yeah.
But I do the sports part of it.
Yes, you do.
Hey, all right, so it is SEC Media Days, 16 teams, that it's a bigger conference, yada, yada, yada. Let's kind of break things down as we are about to head to Dallas here over the next couple of days. I was looking through schedules, and it's not just Texas who has an easy schedule. By the way, Texas does not have the easiest schedule. Have you seen Missouri's schedule?
Yeah.
It's
Missouri.
Not that hard, buddy.
If Missouri comes to Kyle Field and beats A&M, I have a hard time not seeing them in the playoff.
Yep.
If they beat the Aggies, they look so good to be like 10-2. Now, if there's ever a 10-2 team that would get left out from this league, it might be something like that. Texas' schedule is easier than it's very manageable
as of today. What we've seen.
I don't even think there's a we'll see. I think it's very manageable. Conference schedule. They have to go to Ann Arbor. And I know Michigan won't be a shell of what they were, but it's still an early road trip to Ann Arbor. They're the defending champs. Now, look, they don't have the head coach. They don't have the quarterback. They don't have the running back. They don't have half the football team. I get it. It's not
But
Michigan.
It's still on the road.
It's not they're the defending champs in name only. I'll be the first one to tell you they ain't winning it this year. Okay? They're not. You can quote me on that. If I'm wrong, bookmark away. Michigan's not winning the Natty. Plus, they lost our Texas own Christina DeRuyter. Jim Harbaugh, congratulations to CD. Jim Harbaugh took her with him. Mm-hmm. He thought so highly of the job she did there at Michigan. He took her with him to the San Diego or LA Chargers. So
they should go back to San Diego.
Big news there for her and for the DeRuyter family. Tim DeRuyter is still D coordinator at Tech for Joey McGuire. There's a sidebar that maybe we just picked up some Michigan Tech and Charger listeners right there with that. See what I did there?
What's up, guys?
Texas has about as good a path as you could ask in year one. They play Georgia. They play them at home. They don't play Bama. They don't play Oklahoma. They don't play Ole Miss. They don't play LSU. They don't play Tennessee. They don't even play Auburn. They play Florida and Kentucky, respected teams. They get them at home. A&M doesn't have the hardest schedule known to man. It's difficult, and I'm talking about SEC. When you throw in a road trip to Michigan, you throw in Notre Dame at home, the whole thing changes. But when you're talking conference schedules, A&M doesn't play Bama. They don't play Ole Miss. They don't play Georgia. They don't play Tennessee. They don't play Oklahoma. It could be a lot worse. I don't think there's any question, they get their 3 toughest opponents
at home,
unless Auburn or Florida surprises and see. But Missouri, LSU, Texas at home. Probably their 4 toughest of the season at home. So if you're an Aggie, I wouldn't complain too much about anybody else's schedule. If it seems like I'm complaining about Texas, I'm not. I'm just saying it could be a lot more formidable. You look at Oklahoma, that's a formidable one. You look at Florida, that's formidable.
Ridiculous.
So both teams are very lucky that they didn't draw those. OU, I think, is going to have a pretty tough go of it.
Temple, Houston, Tulane, Tennessee, at Auburn, versus Texas, versus South Carolina, at Ole Miss, versus Maine, Missouri, versus Bama, at LSU.
I played Bama, LSU, Ole Miss. That you're right there in Texas. Did you say Missouri as well?
Yep. It's a tough schedule.
It might be 5 of the top 6 in the league.
For them, their first 3 games, though, very manageable.
Yeah.
And then
Tulane and U of H haven't been awful.
Sure.
You got U of H with Willie Fritz. You got Tulane with what's left of Willie Fritz, and they hired our guy from, was it South Alabama? Where was he from? He's a head coach at A&M, gave a look, not a look, but they just, the search firm talked about him as like, that dude's an up-and-comer. I think he went from South Alabama to Tulane. But anyway, point being, I think your top 6 in the SEC, and if OU's in there, then fine. But not including OU, I think you'd be talking, most people
John Summerall.
Yeah, John Summerall. Most South Alabama, don't worry about it. Most people, you can look while I talk. Most people would have Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, and Texas kind of in that top group. And didn't you say OU also plays Tennessee? That's like not counting themselves. That's probably 6 of the top 7 preseason teams in the conference that they're going to face. So OU's got it rough. They really do.
Yeah. Back to Missouri. I mean, they're taking on 2 10-win teams, and the rest of it is pretty coast. I mean, they have and they'll come here to Kyle Field, obviously.
Yep.
Let's see some other ones. Vandy, doesn't matter. Florida, we discussed having. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Do we want to go through all the schedules or talk about who we think? Like I just kind of mentioned, we're gonna go up there and we're gonna find out a lot this week, right?
Yeah.
Next week about these teams. Do we want to go through the whole schedule thing, or do we want to say like at the end of it, what happens every year is that they're gonna rank the teams in order. The media will, and they'll put it out like media days, like predicted order of finish or whatever.
Sure.
Do we want to kind of bandy around like
Yeah.
what we think? I don't want to talk about. I'm going to talk A&M specific stuff here in a minute, but I don't want to go directly to like, okay, this is where I think they're going to start the season. I want to say just like, this is how good I think these teams are going to be this year, not where they should be ranked entering. Like to me, I think Texas A&M should be ranked kind of middle of the pack.
They'll be
middle of a crowd.
They'll probably be 9 or 10
entering a season. I think I get that. You literally have a first year coach. You have a quarterback that's going to start that was injured in game 4. There's a lot in there that would say, let's start them low. So I actually don't have a complaint with that. But what I want to talk about is where do we think they're going to
finish,
or like how good are they going to be this year?
Okay.
So I don't know. Or do you want to?
Do you want to go in alphabetical order since we're having this discussion?
Why don't we just look at well, let's go alphabetically, and I'll say like kind of either specifically where, and see what you think.
Not necessarily
and
like their win total, but like what tier of team they'll be.
Tier or specifics. Like there might be somebody I go dead last, or I think they're going to win it. Yada yada. Okay.
Alabama number 1 with their new coach, Kalen DeBoer. All the things you're hearing about them is they're simplifying the offense for Jalen Milroe, that there's a lot more praise than before. We'll see how some of those existing players but it's still the types of quarterbacks he's had in the past are not Jalen Milroe-like. He'll have to adjust the way he play calls for him. How do you see Alabama this year?
I think he'll adjust for Milroe just fine. I think Milroe could actually thrive in this. I think Kalen DeBoer. Now, he did lose Grubb. Grubb was a big
His play
part
caller,
of it.
yeah.
But I think DeBoer, look, all the dude's done, everywhere he's ever been is win at like a 90% clip. I think you've seen actually quite a bit of one coach to the next. It could be a nice little mix for Alabama this year. From Saban to DeBoer, contrasting styles. I know they lost a lot of guys, but they have a ton coming back. I don't like Bama to be better than Georgia, but I think people are sleeping on Bama. I've had some Bama teams that I thought were going to lose 3+ games. I thought this team this year was.
Yeah.
And they made the playoffs, and they were one play away from playing for a national title. Quite frankly, probably winning it. I think physically they would have been too much for Washington, just like Michigan was. So credit Bama and Nick Saban. That last year I thought might have been his best job. But there's been a couple times where I said I could see them going 9-3, and they've gone like 11 or 12-1. Now everybody thinks they could see them going 9-3. It feels like. I think Bama's going to be pretty damn good, and I think if I'm picking today, I think I'm picking them as the second best team in the league. And
second best. Okay.
And now that you don't have this division thing, we could see a rematch of well, we had it anyway, but I could see a rematch of Bama and Georgia for the title.
Arkansas, no more KJ Jefferson. Rocket Sanders is gone. They're going to look different. Sam Pittman might not even make it to October. What do you say about them?
Their quarterback turned some
Green.
heads. He turned some heads this spring. They got a lot of guys on defense. I think out of the portal. You know, Landon Johnson and Jackson is a first-team all-conference DN. He's a better player than I thought he was going to be. Transferred from LSU. He's found a nice career for himself at Arkansas. But, man, I thought they lost a great coordinator in Odom. I think, and that was prior to last year. They're bringing in Petrino. They hope that injects some life. It probably will. I think Bobby Petrino was handcuffed here.
Yep. This
past year. I think it'll be better. He'll do better things there, but he has a lot less to work with. I think they're bottom tier. I think are they at the bottom? No.
But they're close.
I'd probably still put Vandy there, but they're bottom 3, bottom 4, in my opinion, in the league.
Auburn.
And I think Pittman, he's going to have a hard time being their head coach moving forward.
Auburn, a team that I can't put my finger on. I mean, I know they got wide receivers. Hugh Freeze, year 2. They still have Peyton Thorne as their quarterback. We saw him have an atrocious game, but he did look much better after that A&M game.
But he still wasn't
issues,
like I don't think if Hugh Freeze turns Peyton Thorne into a good passing quarterback and one of the better 5 or 6 in the SEC, then all credit in the world to that madman.
Yeah.
I know they got receivers. I like their running back a lot. He was a guy that A&M targeted out of the state of Florida coming out of high school. People didn't really pay it much mind. He's a damn good back. I think they're recruiting. They've gone all in on the portal. I think their arrow's pointing up right now. I'm going to be very interested to see how far up it's pointing, like as in what do they look like at the end of the year when A&M plays them. And I also think they're one of, I might say this about a couple teams, they're like the Aggies in their ceiling and floor. I think it's a pretty wide margin.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to be a year and a quarterback away. I think this is a team that'll show significant improvement over last year, but I think they're middle of the pack type of team.
Florida Gators, hardest schedule in the SEC, hardest schedule in college football. Some people say that they've ever seen. Billy Napier also, some people I've talked to say he should be fine if they get to 6 wins. But I look at that schedule, the 6 wins are not a guarantee with that schedule.
No, they're not. And what do they open up with Miami? They close with Florida State.
They got A&M that third week too, so it's Miami and A&M in the first 3 weeks.
In the first month, in the first 3 weeks. And so
Mississippi State right after that.
Just their whole schedule. You look, who else do they play? They play some
UCF from the Big 12, at Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, at Texas, Ole Miss, at Florida State.
I mean, look at their last 3 games. You know what it would take to win one of those last 3? Right. Georgia at Texas, or Georgia at Texas and Florida State.
It goes Georgia at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. That's their last few games.
I mean, it's hard to imagine them winning any of those. And if you're A&M, you're catching them probably at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they beat Miami, they'll be feeling good. They're at home. If they lose to Miami, you got coaching for his job. That's always, you have a desperate team. So A&M's catching them at I think they're catching Florida and Auburn at tough times on the road, early and late. I think that's the underlying hard part of the schedule that people don't realize because you see those highly ranked teams. But I think early Florida, late Auburn, if you flip-flop the two, I'd really like A&M's chances to go 2-0. It makes it a lot tougher the way they're laid out. I think Florida like for that A&M game, the Aggies will have to go down there and they'll have to play very well. Connor Wigman will have to play very well. The defense will have to cause a lot of problems for that Florida offense. You hope that you can cause – Graham Mertz quietly had a good year last year. You hope that you can cause him a problem where he has to decide, is it time to make a change in-game to Derek Lagway? Maybe they lose to Miami and they're in that in-between situation. You hope you're catching them like that, but the Aggies will have to play well in the swamp to win and to win a very important game early. With that said, I think A&M is going to be better than Florida. I think Florida is a talented team with a solid QB, and they're desperate and hungry. So they will win a game or two that people don't think they should this year. But I think that schedule's just too much for them. And I think they're lucky to qualify for a bowl game.
They might lose 5 in a row to end the year.
Yeah, they're lucky to qualify for a bowl game.
Yep. All right, the next one, Georgia, which obviously we think of them as a top-tier team.
I think they win the SEC. I do think they drop a regular season game this year. And you know, as much as you hate to say it, I circle that one in Austin and go, that's going to be really challenging for them relatively early in the season.
Open with Clemson, and then you get Texas midway through the year.
Yeah. So I think they'll beat Clemson. I think they're, but Clemson bringing back Klubnik.
Yep.
He's got high-end potential. I think Georgia wins the league. I do think they drop a regular season game.
Yeah. All right, moving on from...
I think them and Ohio State would be like my debate on who wins the national title.
LSU, who... I don't want to compare them to Auburn, Billy, but they get a lot of props because of who they are, right?
Yeah.
Like because of years of history, and Brian Kelly has a great resume. But I struggle seeing why they'll be better as the defense. They got a better defense coordinator. Okay, but what do they bring in offensively? Garrett Nussmeier, he might be really good, but we've seen a fraction. I mean, he's played in a couple games.
I think LSU. I think their high end to me is like another one of those 10-2 type seasons. I do think they still have talent. I think their secondary is a major question mark, and their defense in general, their D-line even. Terrific O-line. I think they're going to be very good offense. They did lose Denbrock. I know people act like it's no big deal. Oh, their 2 assistants were the guys. They were the guy that, listen, I think it's real easy, and we do this sometimes. Everybody does this too much. You discredit, they're leaving, but it's okay. These coaches that do a great job, you can't just go, oh, it was this guy and that guy. It's not. It sometimes doesn't quite especially when it's a new quarterback. I think LSU is in that 9-3, 8-4 range. And maybe that depends. Do they come into Kyle Field and beat the Aggies?
Yeah.
Does that take them to 9-3? Because I think if I was predicting a record for them right now today, I'd go to 9-3. I think they'll be pretty good, but I don't think they'll be anything special. And by the way, 9-3 is generally what they've done since the Aggies have joined the SEC, with the exception, obviously,
Joe
of
Burrow,
15-0, Joe Burrow, national title. They've generally been a 3, probably even if you take out that 1 year and did an average, I bet they're a little over 3 regular season losses per year. People in Baton Rouge don't want to acknowledge that. And I'm not, listen, here's what happens. I say that. All the LSU people are like, well, what about A&M? Yeah, we're talking, this is an A&M show. Right now we're talking about the SEC, and I'm just stating factually. It has nothing to do with A&M other than, hey, for the first 6 years, LSU won all 6. So it helped that record. That's the only A&M relative thing in this conversation. I'm not making a comparison. A&M doesn't have 3 national titles in the last 23 years. They don't have any since 1939. We get it. But that doesn't change the fact of what I'm saying, is that since A&M joined the league in 2012, if you take, and you don't remove it, my point, if you're paying attention, you see what I'm saying. Sans one season, they're a 3+ loss regular season team every year. And that's 11 out of 12 years. So I don't believe that changes this year. I don't.
Hey, let's hear from Academy real quick.
What's so fun about fun? It can take any form. Be a sacred ritual.
Who wants chicken?
Or a random whim. For us, fun is everything. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.
Billy, as we were doing this, I skipped over Kentucky.
Yeah.
Some storylines there. They're a team that 2 years ago were the media darling. Everybody thought that and they've kind of been mediocre the last few years. What do you expect from Kentucky this year?
I think Kentucky's a team that oftentimes with Mark Stoops, you don't want to see him on your schedule. If you're back in the day when you're playing in the West, like, that's a tough one. A&M's never played in Lexington. I don't know. We don't know about that, but I think that's one, like, I wouldn't want to go there and play that team. They're physically tough. They run the football. Mark Stoops is always going to be a defense-first coach. They've never quite figured things out offensively. And once again, they lost a really good offensive coordinator who went back to the NFL. And I just have a hard time seeing it just explode for them offensively. So I think you're going to see more of the same. Like, they're going to be a tough out on any given Saturday, but I think it's going to be just kind of up and down depending on the schedule.
All right, we
middle of the pack.
Mississippi State.
Very low end.
Better than last year.
Yeah,
Gotta be.
They were horrific. Yeah, they were horrific. I think Jeff Lebby combined with Blake Shapen, who I liked at times for Baylor. With him at quarterback and Lebby calling the shots, right? Like, I think for a team like A&M, that's a tough game. And what I mean by that is Mississippi State in Starkville and a Mississippi State team that's going to be geared towards scoring points. Teams that have to go in there that aren't Georgia or Bama that you can just line up and just smack them around, probably talent-wise, which I think they normally you can't necessarily do that to Mississippi State, but I think it's kind of getting to that point for that roster against the elite. I just think for teams that have to go in there, there'll be a dangerous type of game, but I think they'll finish in the bottom third for sure of the league.
Missouri.
I think as a top 10 preseason team, they're a little overrated, but I do think on that schedule, they have a real chance to go 10-2 and get in a playoff. And again, it might be a team like Texas A&M. It's up to them to kind of like keep them out.
Right.
Like Aggies, A&M and Oklahoma, are teams like that going to, take care of Missouri and keep them out of a potential playoff? Because I think coming into Kyle Field, that's one of the swing games of A&M's season, right? Like in year one under Mike Elko, You've got a Mizzou team coming in. They're strong at quarterback. They got Burden at receiver. They've seemed to have figured things out under Drink, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. They did lose their DC.
Yep.
I think they're going to be engaged in some high-scoring football games this year. And I think they're equipped to kind of do that. But I'll be interested to see a team like Missouri that's kind of entering a season with expectations for the first time in a while, and they lost an all-world tailback that really changed who they were. He added, just to me, a level of physicality, staying ahead of the chains. He was a beast. And they lose what I think is a good DC. We'll see at LSU. I want to see a team like that. How do they do away out when they're not playing in Columbia? That's going to be their test. I don't think they're quite there ready to pass it. I think they're going to have a good season. I think they're like a 9-3 type of team.
So
that misses out on the playoff.
Oklahoma's a team that I look at their schedule. I'm like, it's going to be a tough one. But really, the first part of their schedule, you look at the first part of their schedule. Temple, Houston, as you mentioned, tough. Tulane can be tough. Tennessee can be tough. At Auburn, obviously tough. Texas is going to be tough. South Carolina, Ole Miss, Maine, at Missouri, at Alabama. The first part of the schedule is hard enough.
Don't overlook the Black Bears.
Yeah.
Maine. But OU has it rough. And I know there's Jackson Arnold was a 5-star, and they're fired up about him. And there's reason for them to be excited about their defense. Stutzman, Bowen, they got some good dudes over there. And I think they're obviously well coached. Brent Venables' defense is always going to be well coached. They're going to be fast and play hard. At schedule, I think, in a different way than Florida. I think that schedule is just going to catch up to him. And Jackson Arnold, I know he's got the stars by his name. He's dual threat guy. I watched him, as he was coming up, in the Denton area. He was a guy that the Aggies targeted. Last time we saw him, he threw 3 picks. I think it was 3, including a pick 6 in a bowl game loss to Arizona. I don't think you just, again, this is one of those deals where you're looking at Connor Wigman, right? And I'm like, look what Wigman has put on tape versus a guy like Jackson Arnold. And people are like, that's part of the reason OU fans are excited and believe they can navigate that schedule. Meanwhile, all we're sitting here doing, not me and you, but Aggie fans, I feel like, oh no, Connor was hurt. I wonder if he can be healthy, or I don't know. Look at what he's done on the football field versus some of these people they're propping up ahead of him. And I am saying people should be a little more
bullish.
Like that quarterback in College Station. I can read you. I can read you. And they're not the be-all, end-all. Sorry, guys. I think you are, but you're not. What people are saying about him that aren't involved with A&M, that on the NFL level, I got guys saying things like, they've watched the quarterbacks. I had a guy on another end of the NFL text me the other day and said he doesn't really love any of the quarterbacks next year. And he's like, I haven't seen enough, but I kind of love Wigman. And then one of these guys said to me, you watch him on tape versus Dart and Ewers, and you come away liking Wigman. Ewers has a bigger body of work. Ewers should be rated higher coming into the season. So should Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart's a winner. But if there's a quarterback in this league that you go, man, if they can figure it out, around him, that could be really a breakout player this season, it would be Connor.
It would be Connor.
I mean, again, people that don't follow A&M closely enough, or people that, even Aggie fans that have forgotten, I would say, watch the Ole Miss game his freshman year. Watch the LSU game his freshman year.
Watch the Miami game last year.
I know A-Chain ran for 200 yards. I get it. But watch that game and watch what Connor did to keep drives alive. Watch the darts he was throwing early in the game. Watch the touch he was doing, putting on the ball to let Musa Muhammad make those amazing catches. watch a winner operate. Watch him make less mistakes in that football game than Jaden Daniels did for LSU. Watch that, okay? Now, watch him duel with Jackson Dart 2 years ago in his first ever career start, and watch him put up numbers that were every bit as good as Jackson Dart's on a lesser, not talent, but a lesser football team, a team that was losing, okay? And then you said Miami. Go watch him against Miami. Watch the number of hits he took in that football game behind that O-line. Watch that, and watch the throws he makes. Off balance, off platform. I know he threw 2 picks. That's fine. That means you didn't watch the game. You know, one receiver hit him right in the hands in a tough throw, perfect spot, dropped it, went up in the air, intercept. Yeah. The other one was 4th and 9 or 12, and he throws it up for grabs off his back foot. Watch that game, and you can't sit there and go, man, this dude has the, if you sit there and look at that and don't think he has the potential to be great, you're not watching. So getting back to OU, I think that schedule catches them. I do think they make a big jump as far as like how good of a football team they were over last year, but I think the record, which I think might have been 10-2 last year, actually gets worse because of the competition.
Ole Miss, I feel like they can be really good. Obviously, their ranking is going to be very high. But how many games, and you said this on the show the other day, has Lane Kiffin won that are big games?
Lane Kiffin, I think, fact check me on this, but I believe Lane Kiffin is 1-19 in his time at Ole Miss against top 10 football teams. Was the one against A&M? I don't think so. I think it was a win over LSU. I think A&M was number 11 when they went to Oxford and played Ole Miss. I think A&M was like 11 and Ole Miss was 15 or something in that neighborhood. Maybe it was flip-flop, but I think A&M was in that 11 to 15 range. I don't. He's one win in 3 years against a top 10 team. Look, he went 3-1, I think, against Jimbo. Won the last 3, or was he 3-0?
He was 3-0.
So he
because he didn't play him in COVID.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the year I think A&M would have won that game. They would have run for 600 yards. But Lane Kiffin got A&M. He had Jimbo's number. But that's kind of been it as far as like
he had that great win against Arkansas a couple years ago where it was like 52-50 in overtime.
Yeah, but how is that a great win? Like, what was Arkansas?
At the time, Arkansas was highly ranked, but they fell down too.
What has he done? What did they do this past year? What did they do in the bowl game? Did they finally, I think they may have finally won one. They lost to Baylor in the Sugar Bowl the year Dart got hurt. Yeah, they did win a New Year's Six this year. I forget who they beat.
Penn State, 38-25, Peach Bowl.
Penn State, Peach Bowl, New Year's Six. Okay, so I'll call that a big win. To me, anytime you win one of those, you give somebody credit. But that's it. And I know they look good and they compete and they're scary, but he hasn't done it yet. And to me, when you haven't done it yet, it's hard to that last step is sometimes the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can say what you want about A&M and Jim, but they got to where they couldn't make the last step, and then it kind of crumbled from there. That last step is the hardest. He has them to that step, and he's done a hell of a job there. He's done a great job in the portal. He's got the quarterback. The offense is still very tough to stop. He's one of the absolute best when it comes to calling games. I just think they're going to stumble because I don't think they go over the top with it, but I do think they make the college football playoff. I think Ole Miss makes the first 12-team playoff.
South Carolina?
And by the way, I was saying that about Lane. Even in the last 3 years, when he's beaten A&M, how many top 10 wins did Jimbo have in the last 4 seasons? He beat Florida in 2020. He beat Alabama in 21. He beat LSU in 22. And I don't believe they had a top 10 win this past season, did they? So he's gotten 3. top 10 wins in the amount of time that Lane Kiffin's gotten one. And no one's arguing that Jimbo shouldn't have been let go 6 years in. And he had 3 during the same amount of time that Lane Kiffin had 1. So what does that tell you? Go ahead. Who you mentioned another team?
South Carolina.
I think they'll be in the
Bottom tier.
lower middle.
Yeah.
Lower middle. I just
Hard place to play.
Again, I think it's like a Mississippi State thing where it's a tough place to play. You get them at home. You kind of should look at that schedule and put a check by that one. If you're a top half of the league team, you go up there, and if you're in that middle of the pack, you better bring your A game, and that's where A&M finds itself. So you better bring your A game when you go to Columbia this year if you're the Aggies.
Tennessee. Easiest schedule, if I remember correctly. Easy-ish, if you will.
With Nico at QB, and I think Heupel was really restricted last year with Joe Milton and his inaccuracy with the football and what he could do. I think Tennessee is going to be pretty damn good. They've recruited well.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Heupel's a good coach. I think they're a playoff contender. I think they sit on that cut line. Or they drop 3 or they drop 2. I think they're kind of going to be right there. I think that's a good, legit, top 15 to 17, 18 type team in the country.
We kind of talked Texas, but do you want to give some thoughts on where they finish?
We've talked them a ton.
They should be a playoff team.
They should win a 12-team playoff. I think a lot of their fans think they would be a playoff team with a 4-team playoff again. I don't think they should have got in. I do think they should have got in.
The whole thing
it
was
messed up. I could see it. They should have got in over Bama. Georgia should have got in over both of them. But Bama beat Georgia. Texas beat, it got all convoluted.
It was a perfect
And Florida
storm.
State should have been in had their QB not gotten hurt. So that was all messed up. But I think Texas fans will look at their team and their roster and the names on it and the stars attached to it. And there is some real talent. You look at the running back position, obviously the quarterback position.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the O-line in general, but particularly Banks, Kelvin Banks at tackle, who should be first-team All-American. And then they kind of reloaded at receiver, but they did lose a lot. You're throwing in a bunch of different transfers, but they did, I like the guy they took, was it Bolden out of Oregon State, stud. I think Bond out of Bama, stud, maybe not, top 10 pick type of guy like some of those Bama guys, but really good.
Mm-hmm.
But you lost, man. You lost a lot. You lost a lot at wide out.
And can't you say about Sark the
Jatavian
same thing you say about
Sanders.
Lane? What big games? He did beat Bama. He did. What big games has he won?
I think Steve Sarkisian, and I think honest Longhorn fans would agree with me. I think he has a lot to prove this year. I think he did a good job last year.
Mm-hmm.
He did a good job.
Deserves credit for that.
And it's the first year he's done a good job there. I don't think he did a good job when they went 8-5 the year before, and then the year before that, obviously, no one would say he did a good job. I think last year he did a good job. And he has a chance to take them to that next level this year. I do think that's on the table. I think they have the talent. I think they have top 4 talent in the league and maybe top 3. But so I think the opportunity is there. I don't think they have the toughest schedule known to man. But I don't think you jump on board with Sark and Ewers and just say they're going to roll through any schedule in any league, because they didn't do that last year in the Big 12.
Yep.
And he's got some bad losses on his resume in 3 years there and career-wise. But let's just focus on Texas. He's got some bad losses on that resume. And, yeah, they made it. They made it last year. But, man, they were fortunate to win a lot of games. And I know, Ewers was hurt. U of H was not good. They should have. They could have, whatever you want to call it. They were that close to losing that football game. TCU damn near came roaring back and got them. That was a bad TCU team last year. Iowa State, they were in a dogfight with. That was not one of Iowa State's best teams. Oklahoma beat them. You know, that wasn't a great. Texas to me was a better team than OU, and they lost to OU. They did go into Bama and they beat Bama, and I don't care that Bama wasn't. You know, they hadn't figured it out. Yeah. They went in there and I thought they handily beat them. Really, they controlled that football game. That was their high point. Washington, I know they almost made a valiant comeback and a great effort at the end. And if it was A&M we were talking about, we'd said, damn, what guts they showed.
Yep.
Man, that was something you could build on. But if you really watch that football game, just like Bama controlled or Texas controlled the Bama game, Washington controlled that football
100%.
game. Totally. Penix, if the running back doesn't get hurt, they probably win by 2 touchdowns. They run the clock out, they probably win by 2 touchdowns. So I've gone through it, and in the last couple of years, if you took Texas when they play teams that were even in their time zone from a talent standpoint, Texas is like 2-5 in those 7 games. I've gone through and done it. So yes, their upside is national title contender. It is. Their upside is SEC champion, beat Georgia at home, and play a rematch Georgia for the title. I think that's their upside. But I think to just vault them into that upside, I think if you're doing that, almost the only reason you're doing it is you're looking at like a schedule. And you're looking at Michigan being decimated and a new coach. And you're looking at playing your toughest, your conference road games are Arkansas, Vandy, and then A&M at the end.
Yeah.
And that's it. So it's like the easiest road trip in the conference, a bottom 4 team in Arkansas. You have like one truly daunting road test against a rival to end the season. That's it. So it is if you're picking them to go, I think you're overlooking what Sark and Quinn Ewers, if you look at his last 2 years in the games he's at, he was brilliant against Bama. He's had a lot of games where you go, you know, they're tied with Wyoming in the fourth quarter. They were very fortunate to get out of that K-State game.
Yep.
Where it kind of got away from them late. And I think it might have been Malik. It might have still been Malik in that one. Was it?
The K-State game?
Yeah. But point being, that was another one they were fortunate to get out of. That was a K-State went for the win, not for the tie. Ended up that way. I think they missed a field goal at the end that would have won it. So my point is Texas has to play up all year. And if they don't, I think I think fans in Austin would be pretty disappointed.
It was Malik.
Okay. My opinion is I think Texas, here's where I'm torn. I think Texas sits on, if I had to pick today, I'd say they're a playoff team. I think I'll stick with that. And SEC might caught grief for this because I think he was saying A&M might have a better season. I could see a world where you'd have like an 8-3 A&M team hosting a 9-2 Texas team, where A&M to get in, that's basically losing at home to Georgia and dropping one more along the way in the Southeastern
totally
Conference.
Believable.
And where for Texas to get into the playoff, they'd have to come into Kyle Field and win against an A&M team that's probably on the upswing at that point. So I'm not ready to pick final records for those two. That wasn't 9-3, 9-3 right there. But that is something I could see where Texas's playoff hopes hang on coming in here and beating an A&M team.
Last one, Vandy. They're Vandy.
I hope they get better. I like Clark Lee a lot.
Yeah, I like him too.
root for him.
I do.
I'd like to see Vandy be relevant. James Franklin had him relevant. It's not impossible, but I think it's getting even harder in this new conference.
Any closing thoughts? We've talked about A&M throughout. Anything you want to say?
A&M wise, some thoughts as we head into media days, and we'll get together, one more time. I guess right around the start of fall camp, early August. I think A&M thoughts to me, and by the way, what I would like to do, I'm just teasing this here. I'll get Brawny. I think I want to get me, Brawny, and a couple of the baseball dudes. I want to do a for you guys to talk about on the boards. I want to do like top games of the season and top moments of this past baseball season. It's a hard, like we were doing it last night at dinner, and I'm like, that is a hard list to put together. And that's just off the top of your head. That's without like really going back, like those wild, even non-conference games that when A&M went undefeated, but they barely won this one, or took a crazy comeback to win this one, or they walked this one off, So I don't, without even thinking about that, it was hard to do like top 10 moments and games. But I'd like to do that with some of the guys. We'll get together to talk football again before, like right at the start of camp. But just some kind of rumblings and buzz during the off season. I think Wigman is making huge strides physically, and that's what everybody was wondering about coming out of spring. He's looking like, I think when you see him in fall camp, he'll generally be, I think he will be, like all the way back. Marcel Reed, who, by the way, happy birthday, Marcel. That was this week. Gaining, I think, some really good weight for a guy that, he was so thin last year. He came on here, we talked about it a few weeks ago, but he's filling out. Nick Scorton, Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, Arrow just like shooting through the roof. But I had guys that were sitting there watching scouts the other day, watching like that bowl game, and they're like, anonymous scouting season is here upon us. But DJ Hicks, beast. They're like, dude, that guy is going to be ridiculous. And I mentioned to Torian York, like Rodus Johnson, we forget about the transfer who started 25 games at Wisconsin. But a guy people are talking to me about on the D-line, I'm really big on Rylan Kennedy as a stock riser, guy that, like, man, he could provide something. I think out of him, Cassius Howell, and Malik Silla, I think there's a real edge presence in there somewhere, like somebody that can wreak a little havoc to the tune of several sacks, like, 6-7 sacks. Somebody out of that bunch is going to be an edge guy. If it's Rylan Kennedy, so young, I think you could really see a bright future there. But don't overlook Rodus and Cassius Howell on that D-line. We don't talk about them enough. I think particularly Cassius. And then a guy who people inside the program have been mentioning to me with a little more regularity based on how he played this spring and in this offseason. When you talk about, like, who's playing, who's not up front, nobody ever talks about Albert Regis.
I thought you were going to say that name, yeah.
He's played a lot of football here. He's a grown man now, and I think he's a guy that is going to contribute in a big way in that rotation. Again, like, who starts, who doesn't, I think, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, Hicks, Scorton, those are like your kind of like if you're guessing today, particularly those three, but like plenty of those guys that don't start are going to play a ton.
Yep.
And whether he's starting or not, I think Regis factors in pretty prominently up there. Trying to think of what other kind of buzz. Torian came in today, by the way, looks terrific.
Yeah.
I think offensively, Armaj Reed Adams picks up where he left off. I think you're going to be hard pressed to keep him out of the starting lineup. You'll get Cam Dewberry back from injury though, so he'll factor in. But man, they could be really strong at guard, and really up the middle. You'd have Naboo, and you've got a guy that started a lot of games at Utah coming in. So that center position, that's going to be a fun competition to watch. But man, Besantis had a good spring, really good spring. He looks so much better at guard than tackle. And then Reed Adams, like they could be stout up
right there
the middle
guard.
there.
Yep.
I think the most interesting battle of fall camp is going to be at right tackle. Crown over father, like somebody's got to step up and really solidify that position, because I still think they're a tad bit. They're a little thin for my taste at tackle going into a season. So that battle will be significant. And then I'm telling you, they love the running backs. This is what someone that I really trust in football messaged me about. They were watching A&M like kind of studying up on a lot of tape. And he's talking about Kansas State, and he's talking about Colin Klein and the offense, and he was just basically saying, man, they're really difficult to defend. He said he loves what he does in the run game, and he said they're just difficult to defend, and just they really like leverage defenses and make them weak in a lot of areas, just off formation and how he attacks them. Basically, I think he's a very smart play caller that can beat you off formation, and then like they were pretty impressed by him. Here's what he says, just one of the quotes. He said, what Colin Klein does in the run game is impressive as hell, hard to defend. He said, feature a few tight ends. I can see how it'd be pretty dynamic if you can target some athletes at the position. There's so many conflicts he creates every snap. It's insane. That's from some NFL guys. And the thing is, you mentioned the tight end. I think that's going to be a big X factor for this offense, is like, what's Donovan Green's health level like? Mm-hmm. How close can he be to what we saw, a year ago at this time when he came into fall camp with so much promise and then tore that ACL? I think Theo turned heads for the first time this spring, like legitimately, like day to day, making play. But I think the one I'm particularly excited about in the passing game is actually Trey Watson.
Yeah.
They added him from Fresno. Kalen DeBoer thought so much of him that he was taking him at Washington following a run to the national title game. I think they would have put him to really good use, and I expect Colin Klein and the Aggies to do the same.
All right, we'll be back for SEC Media Days on Monday. We'll see you then. Thanks so much for watching, and thank you to Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Fun, memories, friendship. We're here for all of it. Here for the big moments and the small ones, too. We're here for unforgettable triumph, momentary misfortune, and the impromptu throwdown. We're out here each day, chasing something great. Call it adventure, call it play, we call it fun. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Have fun out there.